Hi everyone, it's Dola here from Project Bear, and in today's video I wanted to take a look at Pixar's Onward since it is now out on Disney Plus and hopefully you've seen it. But I wanted to take a look at each character there and see how their response to what they're going through is similar to a response to grief or trauma, especially in light of COVID-19 and what the United States and most of the world is going through right now. And in case you haven't realized, there will be spoilers for Onward. If you have not seen it, I would definitely go see that. I highly recommend the movie. But if you've already seen it, let's get going. So first, let's look at Barley. Barley's the older brother, and he is always positive and optimistic, kind of no matter what's going wrong. And I'm sure we all know that person. We may be that person. Now, Barley made a decision when he was young that he was never going to be afraid of anything because he was afraid to say goodbye to his father. So that positivity and optimism came from a determination to basically not feel the pain that he was feeling, to not actually deal with the reality of the situation. And sometimes we can try to be so positive and then not actually face reality, and it becomes a false positivity, a false optimism. Whether we're trying to be positive for someone else or just for ourselves, it's not good if we're not actually facing the reality of the situation. It's important to realize that we don't have to be positive all the time. We are allowed to grieve the losses that we've had, whether they're big losses or small losses or even unknowns. We're allowed to grieve those things. We don't have to be positive. We don't have to be optimistic all the time. And I think sometimes we put that on ourselves, that we need to be positive. We need to make sure that everyone else is doing okay. And in order to do that, we need to just make sure that everyone knows everything's going to be okay. But that's not really going to help in the long run. So if you know a Barley in your life, or if you are a Barley, it may be helpful to remind them or yourself that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to admit that you don't know how things are going to work out. Our next character is the Manticore. And the Manticore, we see her basically be the most responsible character. She has her business. She does not want to take any risks because of the liabilities. And through that, she has lost sight of who she is. And I think sometimes we can throw ourselves into our responsibilities, whether we are a healthcare worker and maybe we're working double shifts because obviously we're saving lives, or we're a mom and now we have this added responsibility of being a teacher to our kids. Maybe we're the only one in our family that's earning an income right now. So we throw ourselves into those responsibilities. And yeah, we're being responsible, and it is great to be responsible. But through that, we forget a little bit about who we are. And we lose sight of ourselves. And that can be devastating if that goes on for too long. Because as you lose sight of who you are, you can lose your passion. You can lose your dreams. And it's okay to take a step back and still be responsible. Now, the Manticore, she burns her tavern down. Accidentally, maybe. But she goes on and she finds who she is throughout the movie. And eventually she has a new tavern and she's still responsible without losing sight of who she is. I don't suggest you just blow everything up, figuratively, or definitely not literally. But don't lose sight of who you are. Take time for yourself. If you are working double shifts because you're a nurse or a doctor and you are literally saving lives, or you're the only one in your family with an income right now and you have an essential job, don't forget about yourself. Take time to do something, even something each day, little, that you like to do, whatever it may be. Don't lose yourself for everyone else. So if you have a manticore in your life, or if you are the manticore here in this situation, remind them or yourself about self-care. And let them, and give yourself grace too, have some time to not lose themselves or yourself. Now, our next character is Colt. And he is the rule follower, the strategic one. The one that has a plan, and he's going to do this, this, and this, and this, and this is what you need to do. So this is like the person who's going to wash their hands for 20 seconds, and they're going to sing the ABCs or whatever song they chose from the 80s or 90s or whatever. And they're going to stay 6 feet away, and they're not going to leave their house, and they're going to go to the grocery store only when they need to, and they're not going to hoard toilet paper. And if someone else is doing something that they don't feel they should do, they're going to call them out on it. They're going to try to control everything. The problem is, you can't control everything. And it's good to admit that sometimes. That yes, we can control how often we wash our hands or use hand sanitizer. We can control if we hoard toilet paper or not, and if we leave the house, usually, or not. But there are a lot of things about this situation we can't control. And the Colts in our lives sometimes need to be reminded that there are things that are out of control, and that's okay. It is hard, it is difficult, but again, it's important to be honest that you don't know what the government is going to do. You don't know what your employer is going to do. You can't control your family members if they decide they want to go out. It can be so hard to know that someone needs to stay in and not see their friends or go to church or whatever, and they decide they want to do that anyway. You can't control that. The Colts in our lives want to try to control that because they say, hey, if we do this, 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 and this, we'll be fine. It's not always in our hands. It's good to control the things we can, but it's also important to recognize there are things we can't control. And there are some things we can't do. So for the Colts in your lives, or if you're a Colt, remind them and yourself that it's okay to not be able to control everything. And remind them to take a breath. Our next character is Ian. And Ian is anxious and timid and sad a lot of the times, and he really wishes things were different. Not very optimistic, skeptical, and from the looks of things on the outside, you might think he's kind of doing the worst out of all of the characters. But I would argue that actually he is doing the best. And the reason why I think that he's doing the best and is the most healthy is because he is honest with himself and with everyone else for the most part throughout the movie with where he is at and how he is feeling. He doesn't try to pretend that he's doing great. He doesn't try to pretend that everything's going to be okay or that he feels everything's going to be okay. He's honest. He tells Barley that he doesn't feel ready to merge into traffic. He tells Barley that he felt that he needed the rope when he was crossing his magical bridge. But we also see him be willing to face his fears. And we see him mainly because he's the main character, but we do see him change and learn and grow throughout the movie. And eventually he does find acceptance, and he loses a lot of his fears and his sadness and his timidity and becomes a little bit more like the person he wants to be, which is his dad. But what we see in Ian is someone who is afraid in the beginning, and I think a lot of us are afraid right now. And I think that's okay. I know I am probably the most like Ian right now. It's scary. I don't know what the future holds. Trying to be like Colt in a way where I know I can control how much I wash my hands, and I can control that my kids don't leave the house and that I don't leave the house. Trying not to be the Manticore. I'm trying not to lose myself in all of my responsibilities now that I'm teacher and mother. Trying not to be Barley. Trying not to have a sense of false positivity. But I am definitely fearful. And the problem was I wasn't honest with myself at first about that. And I did try to have positivity, thinking that eventually everything was going to be okay and that it's going to be rough for a while, but we've got this as a family, as a nation, as the world. But I wasn't really being honest with the fears that I had, and I think that kind of built up, and that was not so good. So if you're an Ian and you're feeling all these fears, it's okay to admit that. It's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to face those fears sometimes, and it's okay to realize, you know what, maybe I'm not ready to face them right now. The key here is being honest with yourself and with others about how you are feeling. It's completely normal to be afraid in this situation. I think it's important to know that part of the grieving process, part of the healing process, is being honest with where you're at so that you can move forward or onward. So if you are an Ian, or if you have an Ian in your life, please remind them or yourself that it's okay to be afraid, and just be there for them. Find someone, like Ian had Barley the entire time that he was afraid. He had someone who was encouraging him the whole time. It's okay to not do this alone. Social distance, definitely, but connect with someone as best you can. If you're afraid, tell someone. You don't have to go through this alone. If we can pray for you, we would love to pray for you. Our number to text is right here. You can text us and we will pray for you. Our final character is Laurel. And Laurel is at the point of acceptance. She's moved on in her grief journey, and she is healthy and she is okay with how things are. She is facing reality. She knows when things are bad. She knows when things are going to be okay. She doesn't sugarcoat things. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think we're at the point in this pandemic that we should be expecting to be Laurels. I think it is unreasonable to be at the point of acceptance right now. This is new and unprecedented and difficult and uncertain, and to say that we're okay with this, I don't think that is realistic to put on ourselves. So if you've been telling yourself that you need to be okay with this and that you just need to move on, take a moment and ask yourself, are you really okay with this, or are you just telling yourself you have to be because of some other reason? Are you trying to be the Manticore? Are you trying to be Colt? Are you trying to be Barley? And just put on an act to hide what's really going on? Or are you trying to put on an act to help someone else deal with what's really going on? Because this is not just some setback or inconvenience. This is trauma. And we need to really realize that we've all lost something here. Some of us have lost our lives or the lives of loved ones. And that is an immense loss. And we need to grieve with them. And we need to be honest about that. Others have lost time with loved ones. We've lost jobs or sources of income. We've lost vacation plans. If you're a senior in high school, you may have lost your senior prom or your graduation. And some of those losses are smaller compared to others, but that doesn't mean they're not losses. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves about what we've lost and what we've had to give up, either willingly or what was forced upon us. And we need to grieve those losses. We don't need to compare our losses to the loss of someone else in order to have the right to grieve. You are allowed to grieve the loss that you've had, the trauma that you've experienced, and we've all experienced it to some level, no matter what anyone else has experienced. And I think we need to realize that. Another thing, we need to be honest with ourselves that we are dealing with trauma. For instance, for me, I started to get really anxious, like I felt it in the pit of my stomach anytime I thought about my kids and their online schooling, which only started on Monday, so it's been 5 days. 5 days. And I would just get overwhelmed. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. I'm a teacher. I should be able to do this. I only have 3 kids. 2 of them are in high school. I can help them with science, no problem. My 3rd grader should be easy peasy lemon squeezy. Why am I so overwhelmed? And I realized it was because I was acting like it was just me helping them with their homework. And it's not. It's completely different. So once I realized that this was not just me helping them with their homework, this was not just, they were absent for a week, so let's get caught up. This is not just, we're going to be closed for 2 weeks, here's what we're doing. This is an indefinite closure, at least until April 30th. And then everything else on top of that, the uncertainty, the anxiety, the fear on top of that. And it's like trauma on trauma on trauma. I had to be honest. Once I was honest with myself that it was a trauma response, not that it went away once I was honest with myself, but at the very least, I would give myself some grace when I started to feel that anxiety in me. I could be like, okay, you know what? We're not going to do any assignments that cause us stress. It's stressful enough. If an assignment is causing me or my son or my daughter a whole lot of stress, we're not going to do it. It's not that important. And I had to come to that realization because it's not just homework. I would never say that about a homework assignment. It's not just homework. This is not run-of-the-mill, everyday schooling. This is different, and it's unprecedented. And I needed to realize that. Another thing to realize is that if someone had broken their wrist that they normally write with, you would not expect them to write a letter on paper with a pen or pencil. You might be able to see the trauma in their wrist. Maybe they have a bone sticking through. You might not. Maybe it's just a hairline fracture. And the level of pain would be different depending on what type of break it was. But there is a healing process. And it takes time. And depending on what the break was, would determine the physical therapy that might need to be done afterwards. And I think this is the same thing. It's just not a physical trauma. It's a mental and emotional trauma. And some people, they have physical ramifications of this. Their physical health has been affected. Other people, their mental health has been affected. And I think we need to admit where we are and give each other and ourselves some grace. So my question for you is, A, which character are you? Are you switching it up every day? Are you more one than the other? Let me know in the comments down below. And then 2, how can I pray for you? Our number, again, here to text messaging rates do apply. We would love to pray for you, so let us know how we can do that. Have a blessed weekend. And if you haven't seen Onward, definitely go see that, now that it's been kind of spoiled for you.
Can't leave me when my trust is with